Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending our second of 3 workforce development seminars sponsored by the Iron Workers Local 404 and the Iron Workers Employee Association of Pennsylvania. Today's topic, we are going to be focusing on the combat workforce, how we are combating workforce shortages through the idea of apprenticeship. So what I would like to do is go first over a few housekeeping to interact. On the right side of the panel that you should see, there is a chat session. So if anyone has any questions or comments throughout the time that we're here this morning, please go ahead and use that chat area. We'll be pulling together those questions and talking to them and addressing them at the end of the session. Also, know that you will get a recording of this webinar tomorrow via email. So no need to take all sorts of notes. You will be getting a copy of this later on. And we do, like I said earlier, this is the second of 3 webinars. So the third one's going to be later on in the month, and that one will be focusing on technology. Today's presenters. First of all, I'll lead off with myself. I'm Susan Matson. I'm going to be the moderator today, and I'm with Atlas Marketing. And we are the marketing arm for the Iron Workers Local 404 here in Harrisburg. With us today is also Mike Scher. He is with PTM Consulting. He's a managing partner. And Dan Hoke, who is the apprenticeship coordinator for Local 404. Mike, could you just share a brief background on who you are for our audience today?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. As Steve said, my name is Mike Scher. I'm a 32-year member of Glazers Local 252 at the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. For about the last 22 years, I've worked for the Finishing Trades Institute of the Mid-Atlantic region, where I was the education director for that organization. I was also the state director of a group called the Pennsylvania Apprenticeship Coordinators Association and the chairman of the Pennsylvania Apprentice and Training Council. In 2008, after 30 years with the organization, I retired from the FTI and took on 2 partners and started PTM Consulting Group, where we work around North America with different apprenticeship programs, doing leadership training, grant writing, and mostly accreditation services, where we're turning most of our apprenticeship programs into local community colleges.
Thank you, Mike. Dan, how about you?
Okay, yeah, my name is Dan Hoke. I'm the apprenticeship coordinator here at 404. 20-year member. I started my apprenticeship in 1999. 8 years later, I became involved in the apprenticeship program as a welding instructor, and then became a certified welding inspector. And then in 2016, I became the coordinator here. It's been a good career, and so far so good.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both for joining us today. So one of the things that I wanted to do before we get into some of those challenges that we talked about when I first opened, I wanted to remind everybody why this is such a hot topic. And really, it is about finding quality workforce for the construction industry as a whole. And I wanted to give some numbers. If you were on our first webinar, these aren't new to you, but I did want to remind folks that are new for this one. In the 2018 AGC National Worker Shortage Survey, we found out that we have across the United States, 80% of contractors reporting that they have a difficulty of hiring, a difficulty of finding quality workforce. If you go just strictly to the Northeast in this area, and the New England area, you've got, it dips a little down, about 77% of contractors are finding a difficulty in hiring. However, if you look specifically at the state of Pennsylvania, we go above the average, above the national norm at 83%. And then just across the board for the state of Pennsylvania, the need for hire for the contractors is 90%. So there is very much a need. And one of the things that we are also seeing is that that need is going to increase. They're saying that by 2020, it's estimated our national needs going to increase 20%. So what we do to recruit, retain, and train our apprentices are going to be critical to the future success of what we do today. So, challenges. One of the things to determine how we are going to combat these shortages, we need to understand what our challenges are. And really, we've broken them down into 4 main challenges: aging workforce, our image in the industry, attracting new talent pools, and keeping pace. And these shortages, the shortages are going to be compounded by these challenges. And these are very real ones. But before we talk about those challenges, I want to make sure that our attendees on the line understand what an apprenticeship program is, and specifically what a union apprenticeship program is in North America. And Mike, I wanted to ask if you could just provide that understanding of what the on-the-job training with supervised classroom instruction is all about.
Sure. So, in regards to union apprenticeship, there is about 1,900 union apprenticeship programs across North America. Most of those programs have been around for 80 to 110 or 120 years, making them kind of a tried and true workforce development system for our groups. But actually, apprenticeship's been around, since they built the pyramids. Actually, of course, it was much more of an indentured slavery as back then as it was indentured apprenticeship.
It's evolved a little.
Yeah, so it definitely has evolved, obviously, and has improved since the pyramids were built. And today, it's become a very popular discussion amongst those who are seeing, future workforce shortages, as Susan just mentioned. So basically, how it works is, in general, most of the programs are kind of autonomous. They're their own separate fund, separate from the union and the pension funds and all those. They have their own trust document, and they basically operate under standards or guidelines that are provided by the Department of Labor or written by the program and given to the Department of Labor. They're usually about 2 to 5 years, depending on the craft. Some crafts only have a 2-year program. Some are so intense that they have 5, and some even go to 6 and 7. Usually they include about 150 to 200 hours of RTL, it's called, which is related theory learning. And that's classroom-based education that happens either in an actual classroom or in a lab space in the training centers. And that's coupled with 2,000 hours of OJT, or on-the-job training, annually. And once those hours are achieved, both in the classroom and in the field, as long as as an apprentice completes all their work successfully, they usually raise up to the next level of their apprenticeship in regards to pay and education and those kind of things. Most apprentices today graduate with probably upwards of 30 plus safety certifications and a really highly honed skill in their specific craft. I know Dan can probably give a much better explanation of his particular program, and then you can just take that and times it by 1,900, because that's what's happening in the country.
Yeah, Mike, you're right there. Our program we do here is a 3-year program. Each year we do just over 200 hours of classroom and hands-on training, plus a minimum of 1,400 hours of on-the-job learning, where they can take the skills that they've learned while they were here in class and take it to the job and hone them a little more. At that point, they get to work with the journey persons, to get some pointers, learn some tricks of the trade so they can carry it on as their career advances.
Great, thank you both. First, we're just going to get right started and going to get right into this with our first challenge, and that is aging workforce. We have across the nation a retirement exodus that is occurring, that we're seeing, and with that exodus is coming some loss of knowledge. What does that really mean, Mike?
So you have to kind of think of the construction industry as one of the harder workforce sectors in regard to what it does to the body. So it does tend to get beat up a little bit. There's a lot of heavy lifting and climbing and things like that tend to take a toll on the body. So, people in the construction industry are usually looking to retire at probably an earlier age than most because of what's happening to their bodies. And if not retire, then at least leave the field to get into another sector of the construction industry where they're not climbing ladders and carrying heavy things and stuff like that. So, the average age of the retiree of a construction worker is not your national average, which is 65 to 70 years old. Um, it's much younger. It's probably around 55 to 60. So, one of the issues that we deal with, like Susan said, is the aging workforce. And one of the problems we have in the apprenticeship program is that the average age of our apprentices, at least we found this in the union sector, is the average age of an apprentice is somewhere between 25 and 28 years old. And in my experience, it's a common theme that our apprentices are in high school, a little unsure about what they want to do with their future, and their high school guidance counselors kind of push them towards college because that's their job. Local schools get their funding by how many people they send to college for the most part. So they have folks that even if they tell them they want to work with their hands, they might try to push them into high school or into college anyway. And then we find if you look at some of the national statistics that about 50% of college students drop out in the first year. And then that number actually gets larger in the second and third year of colleges. And those people then, after dropping out of school, they kick around with jobs that family and friends can connect them to. They might not be careers, but they're jobs. And then we found what happens is they wind up getting married, they have kids, they buy a house, and all of a sudden they have needs, a need for a steady career with good paying jobs, health care for their children and their families, and some kind of retirement in the future. So unfortunately, that 17, 18-year-old high school graduate kicks around in the workforce system for sometimes a good 10 years before they realize that these good union construction, jobs are out there. And unfortunately, they also leave the ones that do stay in school a little bit longer. They leave with some debt. So that's a problem. But that's our average age, and that's kind of our dilemma in the construction industry. Is some folks the average age of retirement is a little earlier, and the average age of our apprentices starting the program is a little bit higher. So somewhere we have to try to lower that starting age. And, if we continue to work safe and technology helps us, then maybe we can have folks working in the field longer because we need people out there to be able to pass the knowledge of the trade from one to the other.
Absolutely. And when it comes to that knowledge and the passing on, it really has to do that's at the heart. It's replenishing the workforce and passing on the knowledge. It's at the heart of what these programs are, the apprenticeship programs. Don't you agree, Dan?
Yes, I do. And the way we do it here, as far as passing on the knowledge, our training in the classroom is done with experienced instructors that have worked out in the field. The minimum time for our instructors right now is probably 10 years in the field. So they can bring that knowledge in with them and with the curriculum, they can pass on a lot of good information. When our apprentices get back out on the job, as I said before, they get to get the knowledge from the journey persons that have been in the field, say, longer than 10 years. Even the ones that are getting close to retirement, there's a lot of information they can pass on to them. Now, as far as recruitment, we try to go to a lot of the high school job fairs. We get calls from vocational schools. We get instructors that want us to come out and speak to their welding programs, which is a good choice for us because of the welding we do here. It would be good to have experienced welders coming right out of high school, easier to work with, be able to place them a little quicker too in jobs. We work with the ACES program, which I'm going to explain a little bit about later on. And then also we have a building trades career day at the Pipe Fitters Hall, which is a good recruitment for the high school kids. A while back, I actually did a recruitment at a junior high school. I didn't realize it till we got there, but it was eighth and ninth graders, excuse me. So talking to the kids that are probably in the 13 to 15 age range, it was a little different, but you'd be surprised how many of the kids already had a thought of what they might want to do when they graduate. There was a young girl that really sticks out. She already thought she wanted to be a carpenter. Her dad was a roofer, but for some reason she was, leaning more towards carpentry, which I thought was pretty cool. It stuck out. And then again, as far as retention of our employees or apprentices, I find that you have to tell them up front what they're getting into. You have to tell them the good and the bad. It's a dangerous job. It's hard work. Summer it's hot, the winter it's cold. One day you might be 100 foot in the air doing structural steel erection. The next you could be 10 foot in a ditch tying rebar. So there's a lot of different things you have to explain to them because we want to make sure we keep good workers for our contractors. When they first start out, it's the first year you usually get an idea if they're going to make it or not, if it's what they want to do for the rest of their career. So that's some of the things we do to try to retain the ones that the good apprentices we do get.
Thank you, Dan. And you know what? Career is really where this next challenge that we're going to be focusing on, and that's the industry image. About 20 years, 25 years ago, there was a real cultural shift in the workplace, and there was a huge push. College became more accessible to middle America. People thought, I don't have to, the notion of graduating college and getting out into the real world was not necessarily the case. Or getting out of high school, I should say, and going into the real world typically was a good portion of what America was, and that was no longer happening. And we kind of touched on that a little bit. The guidance counselors began to push. The parents began to say, we want something different, something better. And then there was this image that was favorable to the college, but in turn became unfavorable to the construction industry. This idea of it being just a job, and there was such. And Mike, I'm gonna ask you to really kind of touch on this. What is that industry image that really took a hit?
Well, unfortunately, the construction industry has never been one that's, been glamorized. In fact, quite the opposite. When in the 70s, 80s, and even early 90s, the image of the construction industry was the roughneck, the big, guys with muscles that went from their shoulder blades up to their ears, and were sitting on the street corners whistling at females walking by. And there was a lot of hazing in the construction industry for new people coming into it, where you had to kind of earn your keep. And then there was also the kind of that stigma of nepotism, especially in the union trades. So that was kind of the image that was out there. But I can tell you there, like Susan said, there's been a paradigm shift probably in the last 10 years, especially in the union trades. That's what I can speak to best.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that it's really not your father's industry anymore, if you want to, have a saying for it. At the Finishing Trades Institute, most of the programs, we spend a lot of our time training on soft skills and things like sexual harassment, communication, leadership, those kind of things that were clearly meant to change the culture of the construction industry and change that image that it had. There's more of a really heavy focus on the employer's needs, and we have a true partnership with the way the apprenticeship programs are set up. Each union apprenticeship program is a joint apprenticeship program, meaning there's employers represented on there, as well as union leadership, as well as the people in the education department. So we got a lot of feedback from what the employers need out in the field, what the technologies are that are coming up to give us a heads up so we have time to prepare for them. And then when they hit, our workforce was ready. And when I retired in 2018, of the nearly 500 apprentices that were at the Finishing Trades Institute, I can tell you that less than 8% of them were family members of people that were in the organization. So the nepotism thing really isn't a factor anymore, and and a lot of that has to do with exactly what Susan said, with kind of wanting your children to have something better than you did if you were in the construction industry. So a lot of them got sent off to college.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we've also found, and this has been recent, with that paradigm shift, there's been an appeal, I guess, almost a resurgence of a second look. Would you agree, Dan, about how you have this notion of, right now when people graduate from college, I think we already mentioned this earlier, they're graduating with debt, and that debt is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And one of the things that we're seeing in the construction industry that is becoming a real positive force to change this image that we have is no debt, but in addition, you've got this earn while you learn comment.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree there. With us, we start at a decent wage at $18.80 an hour. And you come to our training and it's for free. You earn while you learn, as the saying says. When you're done with our program, you get a very good skill, but you have no college debt. Typically, I guess the average is what, 35,000 to 40,000 a year for college. So depending on how many years you go, you just have to figure out what your debt's going to be there. But yeah, when you graduate with us, you have a very good career, a good living, you have a good retirement. So this would be the way to go.
Absolutely. And that actually, that appeal is also how we're going to be dealing with this last challenge. And that really is about attracting that talent pool. The whole notion of lack of diversity and the average age, we're going to revisit, because that aging workforce kind of crosses all our challenges. But we're talking about the diversity. I guess about a year or so ago, I was in a building trades meeting, and I was sitting there in a room, and the gentleman sitting next to me said, we've got to do something. We've got to make a change here, and it's up to us to do it. We have to do it ourselves, and we need to, look around the room. And I'll never forget this. He said, "It's pale, it's stale, it's male. If we're going to be successful, we need to change the look." And that really is to say, what are some of the things that we're doing here? What are these new talent pools that we're talking about? Mike, I know that you've worked with a lot of veterans over the course. Can you explain to some of the things that are going on there?
Yeah, build on your point a little bit leading into this. Back in 2009, regardless of your political slant, back in 2009, I think it was the State of the Union address, President Obama, for the first time ever in a State of the Union, or really on TV or anything, used the word apprenticeship and how it could help build a workforce for the future. And it seems like ever since that time, apprenticeship has gotten a real serious look from other workforce sectors, which is great for other workforce sectors. But when other workforce sectors start using apprenticeship, it begins to obviously take candidates away from the construction industry workforce sector. So you have to do things differently so that you can compete with the different workforce sectors. Let's face it, some of the younger generation today is a lot more interested in technology and computer-based stuff than maybe getting up at 5:30 a.m. and getting on a job site and having to deal with 3 inches of snow while you're 100 feet in the air. But not every day is like that. So so we had to do some things, and some of the stuff that we did was we went after veterans. There's an organization out there called Helmets to Hard Hats that's actually kind of a subsidiary, if you want, of the National Building Trades in Washington, D.C. They have representatives in almost every state in the country. And what they do is they when our fine military is on their way out, if they've done their time and they're on their way out, and they're kind of having those meetings with the military about kind of discharging and going back to the public. We have some representatives from the building trades there because, quite frankly, veterans are some of the best potential workforce for the trades. They're used to getting up at all hours of the morning. They're used to kind of taking orders for when you're an apprentice and you have a journey person giving out orders each day. They have a basic skill set that they learned in the military. That's really helpful a lot of times for our building trades members. So the veterans is a group of folks that have that's a really smooth transition from the military into the trades.
Absolutely. And having that having that group, that category of people and the skill set that they already bring to the table, it just makes it a nice segue. I would think that you would agree, Dan.
Yes, it would. We've dealt with Helmets to Hard Hats ourselves, Dan Breslin. It's a very good program. When we have people come in to sign up, if they just got out of the military or not too familiar with which avenues to go, I always point them towards the Helmets to Hard Hats. Mm-hmm. So to show them there's more opportunities out there.
How about for the underserved communities, some of the inner cities, some of the Apprentice Readiness programs? How does that end up working for getting a head start into an apprenticeship program, Mike?
So the saying that you just said is 100% accurate in stale, pale, and male. Because like I said earlier, a lot of our members and a lot of folks in the construction industry, their children, they want something a little bit better for them, and they think that maybe better for them is to go to college and get a tech job or something like that. Which means we have a workforce sector that's declined because they're taking other avenues. So where is our next workforce sector going to come from? And us as a workforce has to look at underserved communities and people that normally were not trying to get into the trades. And a lot of times that's inner city youth, females, and minorities. So like I'm running a program right now for the National Building Trades in the city of Philadelphia. It's a 140-hour apprenticeship readiness program. The next session starts June 24th. And currently I have about, I think there's about 20 people registered for a 25-person class. And I can tell you right now, 4 of them are females, 12 are African-Americans, and there's 1 veteran in there. So there's a lot of workforce development grants out there that have that are trying to address those underserved communities and folks that might not have had an opportunity to get into the trades before, but those opportunities are certainly available now.
Absolutely. Somebody just posted that there's also a program, Let's Build, in Lehigh Valley. Which is definitely another program. They have them all throughout the state of Pennsylvania as well as throughout the country. Dan, earlier you talked about the ACES program and younger kids. What is that?
Okay, the ACES program, in our area, it serves the Dauphin County area. What ACE Mentor program stands for is architecture, construction, and engineering. Okay. It's basically, they get groups, the kids sign up for it. They do a mock design of a building project. They have mentors from the architects, the engineers, and construction managers that help them do a project. what happens is when they get to a certain point, they come out to the different trades. When they come to the ironworkers, we show them some hands-on about what would actually be happening on the job site. What we do here is we have a mock-up for the rebar. It's a wall where they can learn different ties for when they would be putting the rebar into form for concrete. We also do a rigging mock-up, which is a structural frame that we let them put together with a set of blueprint drawings. They all work together. We make a foreman out of one of them, and they give the pointers, show them what to do. And when they're done with that, we have a block and tackle we hang on it, and we show them the mechanical advantage by changing the rope to the different shivs, adding wraps. So it's a lot of fun for all the kids. You see a lot of competitiveness come out when we're doing this. One of the other things we do is a welding simulator we bring in from Lincoln Electric. It has a video screen and an actual welding helmet they put on. They can see through it. It shows the screen, and it looks like they're actually welding. It gives sound effects. It's pretty neat. The kids really like it. At the end, they get a score. And then what I've noticed is the female students that come in, they can really push the guys around on all this stuff. But the welding part, for some reason, they seem to really excel. And when one of the male students see this, they want to get another turn and go at it again. So then the female does it, and it turns into a good time. They're usually here for about 2 hours, but that time goes by so quick because of the way that the kids are enjoying it and the instructors are getting into it also.
And that program is not only in this area, but it is all across the country, correct?
Yes.
That is a national program.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's by county. I'm not familiar with outside Dolphin, but yeah, it is all across the United States.
And there are different programs throughout that are also just trying to expose middle school and high school kids into all sorts of different programs. I know at least with my children, I have a middle schooler, and she has a junior achievement program that helps talk about the different opportunities that are available to them. That isn't just high school, isn't just college. And I think from a combating the workforce shortage in this particular for the next generation, it is starting to expose younger and younger, and just letting them know what is available to them so that they can make an informed decision when they need to. But what about those that already are on the job, but maybe not necessarily union employees, and they're interested and they're thinking about that? Are there any particular programs? Dan, I think you were talking about one earlier.
Yes, we have a probationary program that if someone's interested in changing their career, becoming union, or maybe they're already union and want to change a career, we offer a program that would bring them in. We put them to work. We get 8 months to evaluate them. If they do good and stick around, we can slot them into the apprenticeship, depending on their knowledge base, or at that point, they become a journeyman. It all depends on how they adapt and what their skill level is when they get in.
Thanks. And Mike, you kind of already touched on this earlier with the Apprenticeship Readiness program, but are you familiar with any categories that specifically, any projects or programs out there that are specifically targeting women, minorities, and things of that sector?
Yeah, nationally, there's a ton of programs out there right now, especially for women. There's, Sisters in the Brotherhood. It's a carpenter's program. There's the Chicago Women of the Trades. There's a really good group up in New England that has a really strong program. And a lot of those programs are actually starting to filter down into our area, Pennsylvania, throughout the whole Commonwealth. And there's actually a lot of grant money out there right now that comes from the federal government to the state, and then the state kind of looks at their needs. And there's an obvious need in every state to go to kind of create some programs that can give some general education and some general awareness training for women and minorities that look at it this way: the CTE programs in our high schools and the vocational schools have all but disappeared. And there was always those schools out there in the 70s and even some in the 80s. And then, like you said, that shift happened when college became more affordable, and all those vocational programs unfortunately disappeared. But there's a resurgence of those because a lot of people realize that not everybody wants to go work in an office or get that tech job, or sit in an egg pod at Google, like I always say, and then think of new creative ideas. But a lot of people just want to go out and work from 7 to 3:30 or 8 to 4:30, and work with their hands and be able to drive by a project later and say, "Hey, I did that," and make a decent living, family sustaining living at the same time. So there's a lot of programs out there, probably too many to mention.
And I think you did mention this even earlier, there has been a lot on the federal as well as the state level to really bring apprenticeship programs, add a little emphasis to them, and really kind of diversify them. There's a lot of energy circling about from that perspective.
Very cool.
The rounding out the four that we have is really, this is all about technology. I mean, what we're doing today, and the tools and the technology that we have today didn't even exist 5 years ago, and it is going faster and faster and faster. And keeping up with that is one of the things that can potentially become a problem if we don't address it, and we don't have, there's new equipment, there's technology in itself. With that comes new safety measures and staying on top of that. I know that has, even in the last couple of years, can either of you talk to how that has really come to light and really become something that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, so I can kind of, here's a really good example. When I got into my apprenticeship in the mid 80s, they were actually in the city of Philadelphia. They were starting to put they had just lifted that ban on nobody could build higher than William Penn's hat down there. So they started putting some high rises up. And I remember one of the first ones was Liberty One, still there, beautiful building in the middle of Center City. And I remember that there was probably somewhere between 160 to 220 glazers, just glazers putting glass window metal and stuff on the job. And each trade, there was 1,000 or more, probably 2,000 people on that job site.
Oh my.
They just recently built Comcast 3 or Comcast 2 in Center City, and I think there was 25 glazers on it. Everything's built off site, shipped in, put on a truck, lift to a crane, and set into the building. So, technology has certainly changed. It's made buildings go up faster, more efficiently, in some cases, much more better and energy efficient. So it's definitely something that is addressed daily in union apprenticeships with their leadership. And I can tell you that when I was the education director, I was fortunate enough to be sent to school to get my master's degree in organizational development and leadership. And one of the things that I kind of learned there that always stuck with me is the organization that will survive are the ones that are most adaptable to change. And
Absolutely.
The apprenticeship model is designed to handle quick and even substantial changes. The apprenticeship programs have a solid infrastructure, meaning they have facilities, they have professional staff members that are working out in the field, they have resources, they have a direct link to the employer so that they can see what's coming up. So with all that, apprenticeship is really apprenticeship and the folks running them are really the ones that are most adaptable to change. So I'm confident that even with as out there as technology will get, union apprenticeship programs will always kind of be able to keep up with those changes.
I agree with that, Mike. That was well said. Now, on this next slide here, we make sure that it's important to work with our contractors, our signatory contractors, for the adjustment and the technology changes. We try to do whatever they would need. Say it's a safety based change. with me being part of the welding program, I know there's some different technologies in welding we try to help the contractor with, depending on, what plant they might be working in, whether it be a food plant, medical field, whichever. Another thing that we do with the trainers is we have a program out in Michigan. Each year, our international puts it on, and it brings our trainers out there where they can learn the latest curriculum, new technologies for the different courses. The good thing is it's taught by actual ironworker instructors that teach at their home locals and actually work out in the field. So I think it's very important, to pass that knowledge on and to keep up with the times. With our curriculum, our international's always changing it, updating it, for the future. With us, we can tweak our own curriculum for our contractors in our area and the type of work that we might do. And then also another big thing we do is we work with the operating engineers. I believe you know all about this, Mike, but they have a training site in Burnville, and they have all kinds of pieces of equipment. Now they have probably 6 different types of cranes there that we can work with our apprentices. There's a building out there we can build. I believe it's a 3-story structural skeleton. And we can get on that and work with the apprentice operators at the same time. And our apprentices and theirs are getting some training out of it, and they're working together, and they start meeting each other, and they might carry this onto the job site where the next time they're out, they might run into the operator that was at the training site with them, or vice versa with the iron worker. And I think it builds a really good relationship that's going to keep us moving forward, working together.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I've been to that training site, and it's amazing to watch them. And I know that I was talking to one of the other operators, and they said, the beauty of this is not only do the iron workers and the operators get to train together, these guys work closely throughout their career, and to start as they're being taught, in the training process, it just makes that fluid transition right onto the job site, and it just helps keeping the pace if they all know each other and work well together. I think that's a huge bonus.
Yes, it is.
But at the end of the day, why does it all matter? And we talked at the very beginning of this, the whole reason why we need to address workforce shortage from a contractor's perspective, because they need workforce. They need a skilled workforce. But what about the apprentices? We need to make sure that we're telling them and letting these potential apprentices know that they have an opportunity. They have an opportunity for a career. They have an opportunity to be able to have an applicable skill that's specialized, that is highly skilled, it's safety trained, that they're going to be in demand when they're ready to work. This workforce, they're going to graduate, they're going to become graduate apprentices, become journeymen with no debt, but able to go nationwide with their credentials. But even from the employer side, there's a benefit here to making sure that this is successful and this grows. And that really is that there is a proven return here. And I wanted to actually, Mike, I wanted you to kind of remind people of what that return means.
Yeah, and really, there's 2 kind of simple facts that for me that prove that apprenticeship works. Since the building trades and union building trades in particular have been using, excuse me, the apprenticeship model for so long. If you just look at the state of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is a pretty large state, but you have the left bank and the right bank, and then the center, and then there's a whole lot of land in between where there's not a lot of construction going on. So if you focus on those 3 areas, even though the state's very large, the areas inside the state that are actually having construction, commercial construction. I'm not talking about the person doing your house roof and that kind of stuff. I'm talking commercial construction. If you look at the statistics, the union trades have nearly 3,000 signatory contractors. Most of these contractors have been around since the inception of their business, some for 80, 100 years, some for way more, and some, might only be 2 years old, but they were signatory contractors the first day that they went into business. And to me, that proves that if there's that many contractors in a generally small area where there's construction going on, the 2 urban areas or the 3 urban areas throughout the Commonwealth, to me, when you have 3,000 people that kind of trust and sign on to become a signatory contractor with the union because they trust the workforce model and the people, and they know that they're going to have a kind of a steady workforce being trained. That's a pretty big show of how strong the apprenticeship model is. And then there's one little interesting little footnote that goes along with that, if you will, and that is that there's probably about 14 or 15,000 apprentices in the state of Pennsylvania. I know when I retired from the Apprentice Council, they were up near 14. It's probably getting closer to 15 now. And of those, about 12 or 13,000 of the, so let's just say that there's 14,000 apprentices. 12,000 of those 14,000 are in construction. So they're in construction. Of those construction apprentices, about 85% or 11,000 of them are in the union building trades programs, showing that the union employers are serious about training and or trying to address the workforce shortages that are coming in the future, and they trust that system wholeheartedly.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I appreciate that. We are at our time limit. We did get a couple questions. We will share the responses directly with those individuals. Very much appreciate for everybody who has joined us today. Thank you both Mike and Dan for sharing your knowledge and your background. We did want to remind everyone that we do have another webinar in a couple weeks on June 25th at 11 a.m. 3 ways skills and technology converge in construction. To register, you can go to ironworkerslocal404.org. And just to let you know, the presenters for that one are going to be Dave D'Aquilente, and he's with the IWEA Western Pennsylvania, as well as Jessica Tribus, and she is with Sim Coach Games. So we're going to see how some computer gaming is actually making its way into the construction industry. Thank you, everyone, today. Very much appreciate your time. Again, thank you, Dave and Mike. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.